Welcome villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I am your guide, KAGE, the creator of all the what-ifs you see on this channel, with your suggestions of course. I hope you like the video we have today. Please comment video ideas, and subscribe if you're new. Today we have part 4 of What If Naruto Was in Miraculous Ladybug. And if you can support me, please do so on my Patreon, where you can subscribe for $5 to get early updates, text what if transcripts, thumbnails, other arts, and gaming videos. The link will be in the description, so if you can, please help out. So without further ado, let's get into this what if. Part 4, School Life. The midday sun streamed through the classroom windows, casting long streaks of light across the desks. Naruto moved through the halls with an easy stride, a casual grin on his face as he exchanged greetings with passing students. Helping others had become second nature to him, whether it was giving a quick word of encouragement before a test or stepping in when tensions ran high between classmates. It was a rhythm he had settled into, a steady balance between being there for others and keeping his own world in order. As the last bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Naruto let out a small breath and stretched. The energy of the school was still buzzing around him. But for the moment, he had a pocket of peace. With his bag slung over his shoulder, he made his way outside and found his usual spot on the edge of the courtyard, leaning back against a tree. Reaching into his bag, he pulled out a worn notebook, flipping past pages filled with scattered notes and sketches. He stopped at a blank space and, with practiced ease, began to sketch out the outline of a sealing formula. It had been a while since he truly focused on his sealing arts. Between school, patrols, and keeping up with his friends, that part of him had taken a back seat. But today, as he traced the symbols with his pen, he found himself easing back into it. The formula in front of him wasn't just practice, it was the first step in something more. His chakra hummed lightly at the thought, a quiet reminder of the power he wielded. Naruto's gaze softened as he studied the unfinished seal. This was a part of him too, something he wanted to refine, to master. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to start bringing this part of himself back into focus. A distant shout from a group of students snapped him out of his thoughts. He glanced up, watching as they laughed and ran toward the school gates, their energy infectious. He smiled faintly, closing the notebook with a quiet snap. For now, he'd let the day carry on. There was always time to pick up where he left off. Naruto knew Adrian and Nino were already gone. Adrian had a photo shoot today. And as for Nino, well, he was probably off doing his own thing. Whatever it was either something exciting or something completely laid back. With that thought pushed aside, Naruto adjusted his bag and made his way down the steps, considering his next move. Maybe a run around the city would be good. Or maybe he'd just head home. The idea was still up in the air when a firm grip suddenly clamped down on his shoulder. The pressure alone made him pause, half expecting to turn around and see some bulky guy holding him back. His eyes flickered with brief surprise before landing on the actual culprit. Alia, he questioned, the name laced with curiosity as he glanced from her hand to her face. Nice grip. Then, just as quickly, his surprise faded into an easy smile. Do you need something? I was just about to go for a run, or head home. Haven't really decided yet. It seemed like the girl was just about to burst with a secret she just couldn't hold, almost like a conspiracy theorist. She led him down the steps, taking 2 looks at the streets, quickly making sure no one was there. And she burst into her theory right on the spot. Okay, listen, I know this sounds crazy, but I think I've got it. I think I know who Ladybug is, she said, her voice hushed but brimming with excitement. She let go of his shoulder and leaned in slightly, as if they were about to discuss some deep, classified intel. It's Chloe. Naruto blinked. Then, slowly, he crossed his arms, settling into a stance that made it very clear he wasn't going to interrupt. Not yet, anyway. I mean, think about it, Alia continued, barely pausing for air. She's rich, right, so she could totally afford some secret training. Plus, she's always getting involved in Akuma attacks, and Ladybug always shows up in time to stop them. And then there's the fact that she so obviously wants to be in the spotlight. What better way than being a superhero? Naruto's expression remained neutral, though his eyes flickered with quiet amusement. And don't even get me started on her attitude. She acts like she owns the place, like she expects people to listen to her. Just like Ladybug does when she gives orders during fights. It's all adding up, Naruto. She took a deep breath, finally pausing to gauge his reaction. Naruto, still standing there with his arms crossed, tilted his head slightly. You done? She nodded quickly, a wide grin stretching across her face as she waited for his reaction, maybe a little too eagerly. Naruto hadn't expected this theory. Chloe as Ladybug? Really? Was he the only one who could just look at Ladybug, then look at Marinette, and instantly see that they were the same person? It felt obvious. But then again, maybe there was something more at play, some kind of magic protecting their identities. After all, with how their other powers worked, it wouldn't be too surprising. Still, that wasn't the real issue here. Alia had never suspected Chloe before, so what had changed? She had a habit of jumping to conclusions without all the pieces. Naruto let out a small sigh, shifting his weight as he crossed his arms. Alright Alia, what really made you come up with this theory? Alia blinked at him, her confident smile faltering just a little. I just told you, she said, gesturing with both hands. It makes sense. Chloe's rich, she has influence, and she's always acting like she's more important than everyone else. Who else would have as many recourses as possible to be Ladybug? Naruto just stared. His expression unreadable. He didn't say anything, just waited. Alia's fingers twitched slightly, and she shifted on her feet. Okay, fine, she huffed, rolling her eyes before finally admitting, I saw her, alright, she had a Ladybug costume and a yo-yo, just like the real one. She pointed at him as if daring him to disprove it. Explain that. She could just be into cosplay, Naruto shrugged, his smile returning. Cosplay really? Alia gave him a deadpan look, all her energy momentarily deflating. But in an instant, she was back at it. Come on, think about it, this is Chloe we're talking about. She thinks everything she doesn't like is ridiculous, anything even slightly different or weird goes straight into one category in her mind. Naruto raised an eyebrow, and what category is that? The make fun of it relentlessly category. Naruto chuckled to himself. That was exactly how she acted. Chloe might be a bully, but she definitely had a colorful personality. What really made him laugh, though, was the fact that the theory, against all odds, actually had some twisted logic to it. If people started thinking Chloe was Ladybug, the real one would lose her mind. Alia didn't seem to take his reaction well, her eyes narrowing. Are you laughing at me? Naruto held up a hand, still grinning. Nah, not at you. Just at the fact that this theory kinda makes sense. That was all Alia needed to hear. Her frown flipped into a triumphant grin. Her eyes practically sparkling as she leaned in expectantly. But before she could launch into another speech, Naruto cut in. That still doesn't make her Ladybug. Alia groaned, clearly not thrilled with the statement, but Naruto kept going. Listen, I still think she's just into cosplay, there are a lot of reasons that makes more sense. But let's say you are gonna accuse her. Whether you're right or wrong, you'll need solid evidence, or no one's gonna believe you." He turned, finally heading home, but he wasn't surprised when Alia called after him. "So you're saying I should investigate Chloe?" Naruto smirked over his shoulder. "I mean, I knew you were gonna do it anyway." His grin widened. "You've got Ladyblogger mode activated 24/7. Just don't go overboard, alright, I don't want you getting into trouble." With that, he gave her a casual wave and kept walking, leaving Alia to her own devices. Naruto made his way toward the bakery, figuring it was the best place to sit and work on his seals. His room would be the ideal spot, quiet, comfortable, and free from distractions. Plus, he was pretty sure Marinette was out, meaning he'd have the space to himself. Naruto stepped into the bakery, immediately greeted by the warm scent of fresh bread and pastries. Tom, Marinette's father, looked up from behind the counter and grinned. "Ah, Naruto, perfect timing," Tom said, reaching over to grab something from a tray. He handed the blonde a still warm croissant. "Fresh out of the oven," he added with a wink. Naruto took it without hesitation, grinning. "Thanks, you always know what I need." He took a bite, savoring the flaky layers before making his way toward the stairs. On his way up, he spotted Sabine tidying up a few things near the kitchen. He stopped just long enough to greet her with a polite, "Hey, Mrs. DePaincheng." She turned with a warm smile. "Naruto, welcome home." He gave her a small wave before continuing his way up, croissant in one hand, bag slung over his shoulder. Once he reached the attic room, he stepped inside, letting the familiar space settle around him. On Marinette's side, her colorful decorations, sewing station, and fabric rolls took up most of the space, the room still very much hers. But on his side, he had kept things simple: a Japanese-style futon laid neatly on the floor, a desk squeezed into one segment of the room. He had insisted on keeping his setup minimal when he moved in, not wanting to intrude too much on Marinette's space. Most of his belongings were small, just the essentials, so that she could keep her side as it was. With a content sigh, Naruto walked over to his desk, setting his bag down. He pulled out his notebook, flipping to a page filled with seal sketches, and grabbed a pen. It was time to get back to work. Naruto had just started sketching out the finer details of a new seal when a sudden thud shook the room, followed by a muffled groan. His eyes snapped up just in time to see Marinette tumble onto her bed from the skylight above, her body rolling slightly before she came to a stop. A flicker of red and black, Ladybug suit, faded away as she landed, leaving behind a very disoriented Marinette in her usual clothes. Naruto blinked. Well, that just happened. He was still holding his pen mid-stroke, his mind processing the fact that he had clearly just watched Marinette, Ladybug, drop straight into their room, fresh from hero duty. His eyes flickered to the little red Kwami quickly diving into her purse, disappearing before Marinette even realized she had an audience. Naruto, very purposefully, let out a dramatic, exaggerated gasp as he pushed his chair back. "Whoa Marinette, did you just jump from the roof?" Marinette shot up, blue eyes going wide as she realized he was right there, staring at her. Panic flashed across her face before she hurriedly smoothed it over with a forced laugh. "Well, you know, just testing something out. A little rooftop parkour." She waved her hands as if to brush it off, though her nervous smile didn't do much to sell it. Naruto didn't drop his act, scratching his head with an exaggeratedly clueless expression. "Parkour, I didn't know you were into that." He made a point to not look at her purse, where her Kwami was definitely hiding. "I mean, you should really be careful, you could have broken something." Marinette let out a nervous chuckle, rubbing the back of her head. Yeah, I'll be more careful next time." She seemed to be watching him closely, maybe checking if he had noticed anything. Naruto kept his face as blank as possible, hoping she'd believe his little performance. Naruto kept his act up, but deep down, he could feel a twinge of exhaustion. This whole secret-keeping thing was getting old. He already knew Marinette was Ladybug. Had known for a while, actually. The fact that she still hadn't told him wasn't surprising. She had her reasons, and he respected that, but it was getting a little ridiculous pretending he didn't see what was right in front of him. Marinette was watching him closely, probably checking to see if he had really seen anything. He held her gaze for a moment before letting out an exaggerated sigh and rubbing the back of his head. I really gotta start watching you more closely. Next thing I know, you'll be swinging across rooftops like Ladybug. He smirked slightly, testing the waters. Marinette let out another forced laugh. Huh, yeah, see, crazy, right? She fidgeted with her hands before quickly grabbing a pillow and hugging it like a shield. Naruto glanced at his notebook, the half-finished design still fresh in the ink. He could push the subject, tease her a little more just to see how far she'd go with this game they were playing. But, what was the point? She'd tell him when she was ready. Just like he planned to tell her in chat noir about himself when he was ready. Yeah, they both had their secrets, and they were both terrible at keeping them from each other. Naruto sat back in his chair, the soft creak of the wood under him as he relaxed with his notebook open in front of him. He was working on his seals. But he could feel Marinette's gaze from across the room, a subtle pressure that made him smile to himself. Without looking up, he smirked. I feel like we've been through this before, he said, his voice playful. You know, I can tell when you're watching me. Marinette froze, her face flushing as she quickly tried to cover it up. We've been through this? I mean, it's just, her voice trailed off, her words stumbling over each other. Naruto's smile widened as he glanced over at her. You have a tendency to stare, I get it. Her eyes widened even further as she laughed nervously, not quite knowing how to respond. I mean, you also have a tendency to follow me around when I go exploring the city. Naruto continued, his voice light and teasing. He raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the teasing moment. You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you were suspicious of me. Marinette's face turned bright red, and she tried to cover her discomfort with a quick wave of her hand. No, I'm not spying on you or anything like that, she stammered. Naruto chuckled, shaking his head, still teasing her. Relax, I'm messing with you, he leaned back in his chair, stretching a bit. After a beat, he patted the seat next to him. But hey, come over here, you can't see anything from all the way over there. Marinette hesitated for a second, but eventually stood up and moved closer, taking a seat right next to him. She sat quietly at first, her gaze lingering on the seals in his notebook. Her focus shifted between the designs and Naruto, her eyes full of curiosity. So, what is it you're working on? She asked softly, breaking the silence between them. Naruto paused for a moment, considering how best to explain. They're seals, he said, his voice a little quieter now, more thoughtful. They've been in my family for generations. They're intricate designs that ninjas used back in Japan, as part of their techniques. It's a bit more spiritual than practical though, he gave a small shrug, trying to make it sound less serious. Marinette's eyes widened slightly. Her curiosity piqued as she leaned in a bit closer. So, like magic? Naruto smiled, shaking his head. Sort of, I mean, they don't actually do magic, but they're used for things like protection, sealing things away, and enhancing power. He gave a small, somewhat shy laugh. It's kind of like creating a path for energy to flow through. But in a way, it's more like creating your own rules for how things work. Marinette looked at the seals again, her eyes tracing the detailed lines. "They're so beautiful," she murmured, genuinely impressed. Naruto smiled, looking at her as she examined the designs. "Thanks," he said, then paused. "What have you been up to lately, anything exciting?" Marinette blinked and snapped out of her reverie. She thought for a moment before responding. "Oh, not much, just school and, well, a few projects here and there." She glanced at him with a smile. "You?" He chuckled, feeling more at ease. "Same here. Just, helping people, exploring, and messing with these seals." As they continued to talk, Naruto couldn't help but notice the little things about her, the way her lips curled up in thought, how her eyes sparkled when she was excited, and the subtle way she leaned in closer when she was interested in something he said. The more they spoke, the more the space between them seemed to shrink, though neither of them acknowledged it directly. They were both too wrapped up in the conversation, lost in their own world. "So, if these seals are part of your family's tradition, are you the only one who still uses them?" Marinette asked, her voice soft but genuinely curious. Naruto leaned back slightly, his fingers tracing the edge of his notebook as he considered the question. "Well, I'm really not. Some of my family still make seals," he said aloud, thinking about his family. He wasn't the only one in his clan with chakra, just one of the latest additions to them trying to bring back shinobi, although they keep it well hidden. "I'm more so the one who uses them the most. Sure, my family's been using them for generations. But I guess, along with some other relatives, I was the one who really decided to learn more about them." He chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "My parents weren't exactly thrilled at first. They said that the seals were an unneeded part of the family and that only a few studied. But I was able to convince them a few days ago. Once they saw how much I wanted to learn, they helped me out." Marinette's eyes lit up at his words. "That's amazing. I mean, how cool is it that you're carrying on a family tradition like that? You must have been really determined to learn, huh?" Naruto smiled at her excitement, his heart warming a little at how genuinely interested she was. "Yeah. I guess so. It was hard though, there's a lot to learn, and I had to do a lot of trial and error." He paused for a moment, then smirked. "But I think I've gotten pretty good at it now." Marinette nodded in agreement, her eyes bright and focused on him as if every word he said was something she didn't want to miss. "I can tell, these seals are really intricate. Like, the designs are so detailed, and I can tell there's a lot of thought behind them. I don't think I'd ever have the patience to do something like that." Naruto raised an eyebrow at her comment, a teasing grin tugging at his lips. "Oh, I think you could totally do it if you tried. You've got the focus for it." He leaned slightly closer, his voice playful. "I mean, you're always so focused when you're working on your designs. How is that any different?" At his words, Marinette blushed slightly, shifting in her seat as if she hadn't expected the compliment. She laughed nervously, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Well, I don't know, I guess it's different when it's fashion designs. Those don't involve sealing away crazy magical energy or anything." She shot him a playful look. "Plus, I don't think I'm cut out for all the pressure of keeping something so important locked away. Like how you're doing with these." Naruto chuckled at her response, shaking his head. "I get what you mean, but like I said, they are a bit more spiritual than that, and more about the design if anything. But I guess it's not exactly a casual hobby." He paused for a second, his expression softening. "But I like it. I like knowing that I'm doing something that's connected to my past. It's like keeping a part of my family with me, Marinette nodded slowly, her gaze softening as she processed his words. "That's really nice, Naruto. I think it's great that you're so connected to your heritage like that. It's kind of like how I feel about my designs." They're a way for me to express myself and keep a part of me alive. Even when things get tough. Naruto smiled warmly, his gaze lingering on her face. Yeah, exactly, it's like, a little piece of who we are, right? He leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more thoughtful. It's kind of funny though, we're both carrying around these big, personal things, but we don't always talk about them, huh? Marinette met his eyes, her gaze steady and sincere. Yeah, she said quietly. It's funny how we keep our secrets close, even though we want to share them sometimes. Naruto looked down at his notebook, then back at her, his expression thoughtful. Yeah, he said softly, noting how she still didn't seem to know he knew her secret. The two of them sat in comfortable silence for a moment. And Naruto felt something shift in the air around them. As they spoke, they'd gotten closer, literally and figuratively. He didn't even realize how much closer they were sitting until he felt her shift slightly, leaning just a little closer to him as if drawn in by his presence. He barely noticed the subtle shift, but Marinette definitely did. She wasn't sure what it was, but something about being next to him felt different, almost comforting. Naruto, for his part, was still oblivious to the quiet tension that had started to build. His thoughts were occupied with the conversation, the way Marinette's eyes seemed to sparkle whenever she spoke, the way her lips parted just slightly when she got excited about something. He didn't know it yet, but the space between them felt warmer now, the connection growing without either of them fully realizing it. Finally, after a long pause, Naruto broke the silence with a grin. So, you want to try your hand at making one? I could teach you a couple of tricks, if you're up for it. Marinette blinked, a little surprised by his offer, but then she smiled, her heart fluttering slightly at the idea. Sure, why not? She leaned in just a bit more, the space between them almost non-existent now as they shared a quiet, comfortable moment together. The warmth in the air wasn't just from the proximity, it was the quiet understanding between them, the way their bond was slowly but surely starting to shift from friendship to something deeper. Something neither of them was ready to acknowledge just yet. But the signs were all there, and slowly, they were both starting to feel it. The next morning, Naruto and Marinette walked side by side to school, wrapped in their usual comfortable silence. It had become routine, no words needed, just the occasional glance or smile exchanged between them. But today felt different. Naruto kept catching himself looking at her, it wasn't anything dramatic, just small things. The way the morning light bounced off her hair, how she occasionally bit her lip in thought, or how her hands fidgeted with the strap of her bag as they walked. He furrowed his brow slightly, unsure why he was noticing these things all of a sudden. Then, he felt heat rise to his cheeks. He quickly turned his head away, stuffing his hands into his pockets as if that would shove away the strange feeling settling in his chest. What's up with me today? Before he could think too much about it, they arrived at the school entrance, just in time for Chloe Bourgeois to make her way toward them, her usual smug expression in place, with Sabrina trailing close behind. Well, if it isn't Little Miss Disaster herself, Chloe sneered, crossing her arms as she stopped in front of Marinette. I hope you didn't trip over your own feet on the way here, though, that would explain why you're always such a mess. Marinette tensed slightly. Already prepared to brush it off, but before she could say anything, Naruto stepped in front of her. Still relaxed, still smiling, but definitely not about to let this continue. Chloe, he said in an almost amused tone, tilting his head slightly. Don't you ever get tired of saying the same thing every day? Feels like déjà vu at this point. Chloe huffed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Well, if she didn't keep making it so easy, Naruto cut her off with a light chuckle, you know, if you put half the effort you do into bothering Marinette into, I don't know, literally anything else, maybe you'd actually be fun to be around. Sabrina gasped dramatically, while Chloe's face scrunched up in irritation. "Excuse me?" "Excuse you indeed," Naruto teased, flashing a grin. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we've got places to be." Chloe's mouth opened and closed as if trying to come up with a retort, but nothing seemed to land. With an irritated huff, she spun on her heel and stomped off, Sabrina quickly scurrying after her. Marinette let out a small sigh of relief before looking at Naruto with a soft smile. "Thanks, Naruto." "Hey, no problem," he said easily. "Gotta protect my friends, right?" For some reason, those words made Marinette's shoulders drop slightly, her smile faltering just a bit. Naruto didn't notice. Instead, he simply turned and walked toward the school doors, completely unaware of the small, conflicted look on Marinette's face as she followed behind. When Naruto got to class, he slid into his usual seat beside Adrian, with Nino sitting just a chair away. The three had been practically inseparable since their first day, their conversations always picking up where they left off, as if no time had passed at all. Today was no different. Almost immediately, their chatter turned toward their next hangout. "I don't know, guys," Adrian started, sounding hesitant. "Sure, my dad didn't find out about last time, but this week I'm busier than usual." Both Naruto and Nino raised an eyebrow at that. Nino was the first to ask what was on his mind. "What do you mean, you usually do your photo shoots on Tuesdays? Right?" Adrian nodded. "Yeah, but my dad is launching a new product line, so I have double the shoots this week and over the weekend. Plus, I still have fencing practice." Nino sighed dramatically. "Man, that sucks." A short silence passed as they took in the unfortunate news, but Naruto quickly perked up, an idea sparking in his mind. "We don't have to do anything big this week," he said. "How about we just hang out during our school breaks? We don't have any big tests coming up, so it should be fine." Adrian and Nino exchanged glances before nodding. "That sounds great," Adrian said with a small smile. "As long as we're not doing another eating contest like last time." Nino smirked, crossing his arms. "I dunno, Adrian, it was kinda fun. But yeah, maybe let's leave food out of it this time." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Wait, why are eating contests suddenly off the table?" "I didn't beat you guys that bad, did I?" he asked, his grin playful. Adrian and Nino shared a knowing look, as if they both understood something Naruto didn't. That made the blonde narrow his eyes in suspicion. "Naruto, no offense," Nino started, chuckling, "but you're a demon when it comes to food." "Yeah," Adrian added, shaking his head in amusement. "You ate 10 bowls of ramen from that food stall without even breaking a sweat. And I'm pretty sure if we hadn't stopped, you would have kept going." Nino laughed at that, while Naruto simply grinned. "Well, what can I say, exploring Paris as a hobby makes you hungry." Nino wasn't convinced. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his palm. "Nah, man, it wasn't just that. It was almost like your DNA was programmed to consume massive amounts of ramen, like you were some kind of super soldier for food," he smirked. "Especially with ramen." That made Naruto pause for a fraction of a second before he let out a sheepish chuckle. Well, technically, that's not wrong. His mother had once told him that their family had a very special relationship with ramen. But he would never admit that out loud. As their conversation faded into idle chatter, the classroom settled as their teacher, Miss Bustier, walked in, setting her bag down on the desk. The students quieted down, though a few hushed murmurs still floated through the air. "Good morning, everyone," Miss Bustier began, scanning the room before continuing. "Before we start, I have an announcement. Alia will not be joining us today. She has been suspended." A beat of silence filled the air before Marinette shot up from her seat. "What?" she blurted out, her voice echoing louder than she intended. A few students snickered at her reaction, but Marinette barely noticed, too shocked to care. Miss Bustier sighed, motioning for her to sit back down. "I understand this may come as a surprise. But please, remain seated. We will continue without her for now." Marinette slowly sank back into her chair, her face still twisted in disbelief. Whispers broke out across the room, everyone now curious about what could have possibly led to Alia's suspension. Naruto, on the other hand, remained calm, though his interest was definitely piqued. "Aliac suspended, that doesn't add up." He glanced at Marinette, whose mind was clearly racing, before making a decision. He raised his hand. "Hey, Miss Bustier, can I go to the bathroom?" The teacher gave him a tired look, already suspecting he wasn't actually planning to go. Still, she sighed and waved him off. "Fine, but make it quick." Naruto was already on his feet before she finished speaking. He gave Marinette a reassuring pat on the shoulder as he walked past her, though he didn't say anything. "I'm not going to the bathroom," he thought as he stepped into the hallway. Time to figure out why Alia was suspended. There is something else, and he could tell it had something to do with Chloe since she wasn't in class. Naruto walked down the hall, his pace even but purposeful as he approached the principal's office. He wasn't angry. Alia wasn't the type to get suspended over something reasonable. So he just wanted answers. Reaching the door, he knocked once before pushing it open. The principal, a middle-aged man with a balding head and tired eyes, looked up from his desk in mild surprise. "Naruto," he asked, setting his pen down. "Shouldn't you be in class?" Naruto offered a small smile, leaning against the doorframe. "I was, but then I heard Alia got suspended, so I figured I'd ask you myself, why?" The principal sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose before replying, "She was caught stealing from Chloe. The standard action for theft is suspension." Naruto's smile faded, his brows furrowing slightly. "That's a lie," he said, voice still calm but firm. "Alia would never do something like that." At those words, the principal shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He avoided Naruto's gaze, instead staring down at his desk as if the answer would magically write itself out for him. Naruto noticed this hesitation and felt a pang of confusion. "Sir?" After a long pause, the principal let out a heavy sigh, finally meeting Naruto's eyes. "Chloe twisted my hand," he admitted, shame evident in his tone. "I wrongfully suspended Alia. She didn't steal anything, but Chloe made it seem like she did. She pulled strings. Mainly by threatening to call her father." Naruto exhaled slowly, crossing his arms. Of course, he thought. If Chloe actually did call the mayor, this situation would have escalated even further. But that didn't make what the principal did any better. Before he could say anything, a voice rang out from the doorway. "That's all I needed to hear." Naruto turned his head sharply, his eyes narrowing as he saw Alia, except it wasn't really Alia anymore. Lady Wifi stood confidently in the doorway, her eyes glowing with power as she held up her phone. With a flick of her fingers, a red, glowing pause button materialized and shot toward the principal. Naruto barely had time to react before the energy disc hit, freezing the man in place. His eyes darted back to Lady Wifi, noticing another glowing disc floating beside her phone. This one had a record symbol on it. Naruto's mind quickly put the pieces together. She had recorded everything. Naruto took a cautious step forward, his sharp eyes locked onto Alia, or rather, Lady Wifi. His voice was steady, but there was a clear edge of concern beneath it. "B, Alia, what are you doing?" Lady Wifi didn't even flinch, "Getting justice." She tilted her phone slightly, making the recording symbol glow brighter. Now the whole city will know exactly how corrupt this school is. Before Naruto could say another word, she swiped her finger across the screen, and the recording projection dispersed into the air. A second later, holographic screens flickered to life across Paris, on buildings, bus stops, even in the middle of crowded streets. The video of the principal's confession played in full view of everyone. As the recording played before him, Naruto remained still, watching the conversation he had just had with the principal unfold once again. But then, at the very end, Lady Wi-Fi appeared on the screen. "This is just the beginning. Chloe Bourgeois is more than just a spoiled brat, she's Ladybug. And I'm going to prove it to all of Paris. Your so-called hero is nothing more than a fraud." The message cut out, leaving only a glowing pause icon in its place before the projection disappeared. The school halls buzzed with murmurs and confusion. The weight of what had just been revealed sent shockwaves through the student body. It wasn't long before the principal made the call. School was being let out early for safety reasons. Students rushed to grab their things, eager to get home before the chaos in the city escalated, but Naruto? He wasn't going home. While everyone else exited through the front, Naruto slipped away unnoticed, making his way to a secluded part of the school. His expression hardened. He tapped his watch, instantly enclosing Naruto in his fire shadow outfit in a burst of chakra. In mere moments, his casual school uniform was gone, replaced by his black and crimson gear. He tightened the wraps on his gloves before launching himself onto the nearest rooftop, eyes sharp as he scanned the city below. If Alia's going after anyone, it's going to be Chloe. Without wasting another second, Fire's shadow took off, racing toward the Bourgeois Hotel. Naruto moved swiftly across the rooftops, leaping from one to another with ease. Navigating the city's landscape was second nature to him, and it didn't take long for him to spot his teammate stationed near Le Grand Paris, scanning the area just as planned. Adjusting his trajectory mid-air, Naruto twisted his body and landed smoothly beside Chat Noir. "Sorry I'm late," he said, straightening up. "But in my defense, I don't have much mobility outside of running." A grin formed beneath his mask. Ladybug crossed her arms, giving Naruto a quick once-over. "Took you long enough," she said, though there was no real bite to her words. Chat Noir chuckled. Yeah, excuses. But at least you made it." Naruto rolled his shoulders, already glancing around. "Any sign of Lady Wi-Fi?" Ladybug shook her head. "Not yet. But if she's sticking to her pattern, she'll be heading straight for Chloe." Chat Noir sighed dramatically. "Of course. Because if anyone was going to make themselves a prime target for an akumatized revenge, it's her." Naruto smirked. "She does have a way of making enemies." Ladybug huffed. "This isn't funny, you two. Lady Wi-Fi is serious about this. She thinks she's exposing Chloe as Ladybug, and if we don't stop her, who knows how much chaos she'll cause." Naruto nodded. "Then let's not waste time." He turned toward the hotel. "Chloe's probably in her suite. If we move now, we can intercept Lady Wi-Fi before she gets there." Ladybug and Chat Noir exchanged a look before nodding in agreement. Without another word, the three took off across the rooftops, heading straight for Le Grand Paris. Naruto, Ladybug, and Chat Noir landed on a rooftop across from Chloe's suite, staying low as they surveyed the scene. Ladybug and Chat Noir both tapped their weapons, transforming them into makeshift screens. With a quick adjustment, they zoomed in on the room across from them. What they saw made Naruto chuckle. Chloe was dressed in a knockoff Ladybug costume, struggling to swing her yo-yo around. She attempted a dramatic pose, only for the yo-yo to slip from her grip and nearly hit Sabrina, who barely dodged in time. Ladybug groaned, rubbing her temples. I cannot believe anyone would think she's the real Ladybug. Her voice was more exasperated than amused. Chat Noir snickered. Well, on the bright side, at least she's committed to the bit. Naruto smirked. Yeah, so committed in fact a villain believes she is Ladybug. Ladybug huffed but didn't argue. Chat Noir stretched, tapping his staff against his shoulder. Well, this should be quick, shouldn't it? I mean, Naruto, you've got elemental powers. Lady Wifi's abilities are tech-based, just hit her with water, and we're done. Naruto crossed his arms, tilting his head. You make it sound so easy, we don't even know the limits of her abilities yet. Ladybug nodded. Exactly, we can't assume anything. Lady Wifi might have a backup plan if a direct attack doesn't work. Chat Noir sighed, fair point, so, what's the plan? Ladybug thought for a moment before narrowing her eyes at Chloe's suite. First, we need to get inside before Lady Wifi does, we stop this before it even starts. Naruto cracked his knuckles, sounds good to me. With that, the three heroes leaped into action, making their way toward Chloe's suite before Lady Wifi could strike. As soon as they landed in Chloe's suite, Lady Wifi emerged from the large phone screen mounted on the wall. Without hesitation, she flicked her wrist, sending a glowing purple pause icon straight at Chloe. Chloe barely had time to scream before she was frozen mid-motion, her face locked in a horrified expression. Before Ladybug could react, Naruto, or rather Fire Shadow, stepped forward, his stance firm. Chat Noir followed, twirling his staff in preparation. Lady Wifi turned toward them, surprised look on her face. Wait, Ladybug, she then turned back to Chloe, I thought she was Ladybug. Chloe, now able to move her eyes slightly, saw them and yelped, quickly scrambling out of view, disappearing into another part of her suite. Ladybug narrowed her eyes. Alia, what are you doing? Lady Wifi smirked, tilting her head. While I don't like surprises, I can tell you that she's not available right now. She's been disconnected. Lady Wifi will find the truth, Ladybug, starting with your identity. Chat Noir sighed dramatically. Alright, we get it, you're fully committed to the theme. Ladybug, ignoring Chat Noir, took a determined step forward. This isn't the way, Alia. Lady Wifi's expression darkened. The way is exposing the truth, and I'll start by proving that Ladybug is nothing more than a spoiled brat hiding behind a mask. With a flick of her hand, she sent out multiple purple pause discs, each one glowing ominously as they shot toward the team. Scatter, Ladybug ordered. The three of them dodged in sync, flipping and weaving between the deadly discs. They left small impact craters where they hit, proving that getting tagged wasn't an option. Seeing an opening, Naruto landed on a coffee table and quickly formed a water-style hand seal. Water-style, flowing torrent. A rush of water spiraled toward Lady Wifi's phone, aiming to short-circuit it. But she was fast. With a swift sidestep, she dodged, the water splashing harmlessly onto the floor. Nice try, Fire Shadow, but you'll have to be quicker than that. The battle continued, an intense back and forth. Ladybug used her yo-yo to try and grab her, but Lady Wifi teleported between screens. Chat Noir attempted to corner her, only for her to phase into another device. Naruto kept attempting water-based strikes, but her agility made her difficult to pin down. Then, mid-dodge, Fire Shadow's eyes narrowed in realization. Wait, she's always near a device. Ladybug blocked a pause disc with her yo-yo. Yeah, she's using them to teleport. No, it's more than that, Fire Shadow said, his mind piecing it together. She's not just teleporting through them, her power is tied to the Wi-Fi signal in this area. If we weaken the connection, her abilities might stop working. There was a brief moment of hesitation from Ladybug and Chat Noir. They didn't question him outright, but there was the slightest pause, a moment where they processed his theory before reacting. Then, Ladybug nodded, "That makes sense. If we go deeper into the building, where the signal is weaker, her connection could start lagging." Chat Noir finished, grinning. Fire Shadow caught that beat of hesitation in them but brushed it off for now. This wasn't the time to dwell on it. "Then let's move." 9, he said, already dashing toward the grand staircase. Ladybug and Chat Noir followed close behind, the three of them descending into the lower levels of Chloe's suite, where the Wi-Fi signal and Lady Wi-Fi's control would begin to break. As they paused for a brief moment, catching their breath in the lower levels of Chloe's suite, Chat Noir glanced at Ladybug, his curiosity getting the better of him. "So, Ladybug," he started, leaning slightly toward her with his signature grin, "are you sure you don't want to tell us your identity, just in case?" Naruto, Fire Shadow, shook his head, crossing his arms. "Really man, now's not the time to be asking that." Chat Noir turned to him with a smirk. "What, aren't you even a little curious? I mean, we could already know each other in real life." Fire Shadow shrugged, "Of course I'm curious, it's totally normal to wonder. But even if I don't necessarily agree with your whole, no identities rule, I respect it. You two are my teammates, and if Ladybug doesn't want to tell us, then she doesn't have to." Chat Noir's expression faltered for a second. It wasn't like Fire Shadow was being harsh, but the sincerity behind his words made Chat Noir feel a little selfish for pushing the topic. Still, the nagging thought remained in his mind. "I just never really needed to know before," Chat Noir admitted, his voice softer now. "But when I saw that Chloe might be Ladybug, I realized, I really want to know the person I might." He trailed off, looking away. Ladybug's eyes widened slightly before she sighed. "There's no time to talk about this right now." They fell into silence. The fight had stopped, no more attacks were coming. Then, a sound echoed through the suite, a small click. A door shutting, all three of them immediately went on alert. They quickly made their way back up, retracing their steps. As they reached the stairwell's upper level, they noticed that only one door remained unlocked. Fire Shadow exhaled slowly, "Looks like we found her." Ladybug nodded, gripping her yo-yo tighter. "Get ready, this is probably an ambush." The trio exchanged determined looks, steeling themselves before stepping forward, prepared for whatever Lady Wi-Fi had waiting for them. They opened the door cautiously, tense and prepared for an ambush, but nothing came. No pause discs, no shouting, no movement, just silence. The three heroes stepped inside slowly, the suite eerily still. The lights were low, casting long shadows across the sleek, expensive furniture. As they moved in further, they noticed something strange. Multiple phones were scattered across the tables and counters in the room, all glowing faintly. "What is this, her personal tech store?" Chat Noir muttered, tapping one with his baton and earning a faint ding from the screen. Ladybug stayed alert, eyes scanning the room sharply. She must have been setting something up. "Be careful, this could be a trap." Fire Shadow paced a bit ahead, crouching next to one of the phones. "Maybe," he said thoughtfully, "or she's trying to make sure we don't know which one she's using to cast her powers." He glanced up at them, a slight grin in his voice. "Smart girl, kinda annoying, but smart." Chat Noir snorted, "You'd think with all this tech, she'd invest in a better personality." Ladybug shot him a brief look. "Focus, Chat." "Right, focused." He twirled his baton loosely, clearly trying to be serious. Naruto stood up, walking past another pair of phones. No obvious signals, maybe she already moved on. He leaned against the edge of a chair, playful but attentive. If we find a giant screen that says you lose, I'm going home. Ladybug rolled her eyes. Not yet, you're not. Let's split up and check the room. She's not done, she's just playing with us. Fire Shadow's eyes narrowed a bit behind his mask. Yeah, he thought, this feels like the calm before the storm. Without warning, Lady Wi-Fi burst out of one of the phones near the window, her body forming in a crackle of violet energy and static. Found you, she hissed. Before any of them could counter, she launched a glowing pause disc at them, forcing the team to scatter. Naruto dove left, rolling behind a chair, while Ladybug flipped onto a nearby table. Chat Noir deflected one of the discs with his staff, but by the time he looked up, she was gone. Reappearing from another phone across the room, she launched another barrage. One disc zipped past Naruto's shoulder, grazing his sleeve before smashing into the wall behind him and freezing the wallpaper mid-ripple. Naruto gritted his teeth, eyes sharp. She's not just teleporting randomly. Every time she vanishes, she's reappearing from another phone. Ladybug tried to close the distance, her yo-yo swinging toward the phone Lady Wi-Fi had just come out of, but it was too late. Another crackle of energy, another flash, and Lady Wi-Fi phased through a new phone by the hallway table, launching discs like she was in a game of whack-a-mole. This is insane, Chat shouted. I thought she was after you. Ladybug, why's she trying to pause all of us like a bad TV show? She's not just targeting me anymore, Ladybug responded, dodging low beneath a disc. Naruto ducked under a table, breathing calmly despite the chaos. No, it's more than that. She's making sure no one can pin her down. She's using the phones like portals. It's clever, but it also means she's vulnerable. He looked around, taking stock. Too many phones. Too many exits. If I were her, I'd be bouncing between them to keep the advantage. So, if I destroy the network, he stood, forming a single-hand seal. Water style, serpent burst, he whispered, and from his palm, a stream of condensed water launched toward one of the phones on a nearby desk. And with a crack, the phone exploded in sparks. Lady Wi-Fi, halfway through materializing from it, was yanked back into the ether mid-transition. I knew it, Naruto muttered. The phones are her tether, no phones, no teleporting. Ladybug glanced back, realizing what he'd done. Clever shinobi, she said slyly. Naruto smirked under his mask. Flattery later, let's take out the rest. They worked in perfect sync, Ladybug smashing a phone near the couch with her yo-yo, Chat Noir using his staff to sweep another off the counter. Naruto took out two more with well-aimed water bursts, sparks and shattered screens bursting around him. With each phone destroyed, Lady Wi-Fi's flickering form grew more agitated. Her teleportation now delayed, clumsy. But just as Naruto turned to regroup, a glowing lock disc slammed into his side, flinging him across the room and crashing through a set of double doors into the sweets kitchen. He skidded across the tile and rolled to a stop against a metal counter. Before he could recover, a second lock disc sealed the kitchen door shut, cutting him off from Ladybug and Chat. Fire Shadow, Ladybug shouted from the other side, pounding on the door. Naruto stood quickly, his breath steady but cautious. Damn, I got careless. Lady Wi-Fi emerged from the shadows of the kitchen, her phone glowing like a violet heart in her palm. Her smirk was colder than ever. I wanted Ladybug, she said, walking in a slow circle around Naruto, but a shinobi might be even more interesting. Naruto held up a hand, voice calm but serious. Alia, I know you're in there, you don't want to do this. You don't know anything, she hissed, sending a disc his way. He ducked it, flipping over the counter and launching a water shot at the phone in her hand. She twisted aside just in time, the blast missing by inches and slamming into a cupboard, splintering it. "I know you're angry, and I know Chloe set you up," Naruto said as he dodged another attack. "But this isn't the way to fix it." Lady Wifi's eyes narrowed. "Isn't it? I'm just showing Paris the truth. Starting with yours." She threw another disc, this time glowing red with a lock icon, and Naruto didn't have time to move. It hit him square in the chest. With a mechanical clack and a surge of energy, his arms were slammed back against the kitchen wall, locked in place by glowing restraints of light. The wall cracked behind him from the force of the impact. Naruto struggled against them, wincing, but they held firm. On the other side of the door, he could hear Ladybug's desperate voice, "Fire Shadow, hold on." "Guess the mask comes off now," Lady Wifi said, stepping closer. The phone in her hand glowed with a recording symbol, already capturing every moment. "If I can't find out who she is, I'll find out who you are." She reached forward. Naruto's heart thudded in his chest, not with fear, but with uncertainty. He didn't mind revealing himself for Alia's sake, but it wasn't just his secret anymore. Ladybug and chat still didn't fully trust him. One wrong move, one wrong truth. Her fingers brushed the edge of his mask. Almost there, the moment hung in the air like a held breath. Just one more pull. Lady Wifi's fingers curled around the edge of Naruto's mask, a wicked gleam in her eyes as her phone floated up, holographically recording the moment. The lens centered on Naruto's face, the glowing red light blinking slowly, counting down to the moment of revelation. She tugged. The fabric shifted just slightly, the lower half of his face starting to show, jawline, a hint of blonde hair. A sudden, sharp burst of air hissed through the top of the kitchen. The vent cover slammed to the floor, and in one clean motion, Ladybug dropped in from the ceiling like a blur of red and black. Lady Wifi barely had time to turn. "Step away from him," Ladybug shouted, Yo-Yo already mid-swing. Lady Wifi leapt back with a growl, her recording still active. Well, the love bug comes to save her shinobi. From his spot against the wall, Naruto gave a tired exhale and muttered, "Here we go." "I'm not his love bug," Ladybug snapped, a fierce blush threatening to creep into her cheeks, but her voice was pure steel. "I'm his teammate, and you're done hurting people." The kitchen shook with the clash of Yo-Yo against tech. Ladybug ducked and dodged, agile and precise, but Lady Wifi was relentless, teleporting from one phone to another, using her environment with frightening intelligence. Naruto, hand still bound against the wall by the glowing lock disc, could only watch as his teammate danced between freezing purple projectiles. Ladybug made a leap toward the villain, but Lady Wifi anticipated it. "Got you," she whispered. A purple lock disc sailed through the air and hit the wall behind Ladybug, just as the freezer door swung open behind her. Another disc slammed into her back, launching her inside before she could react. The door snapped shut, a glowing lock disc sealing her in from the outside. "Ladybug," Naruto shouted, straining against the binds, his wrists burning as he pulled. "No!" Lady Wifi stepped back, pleased with her work. "I'll deal with you later, shinobi, there's a certain kitty I'll deal with next," she said, vanishing in a shimmer of tech. Silence settled over the kitchen. Naruto's breath came fast, misting in the air. The cold from the freezer seeped into the room, but not as cold as the fear inching through him. He stared at the freezer door. Images flickered in his mind, Marinette laughing with Alia, Ladybug shouting plans in battle, her voice calm but never cold, never alone. She was always the leader, the strong one, but now. He clenched his fists. Inside, Ladybug was trapped. And for the first time since coming to this world, Naruto felt something inside him stir, a heat that didn't come from fire. His chakra flared. Red, wild, and alive, like it had been waiting. The lock disc on his wrists cracked, a ripple of red light crawling through its circuitry. It fizzled and died. Naruto blinked in surprise, barely believing it. Then he lunged. He ran to the freezer, fire in his veins. With a single punch, surging with that strange new red chakra, he shattered the lock disc on the wall. The freezer burst open. Ladybug stumbled out, arms wrapped around herself, lips slightly blue. She blinked up at him. "You," she started. Voice shivering. "I got you," Naruto said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're okay." Their eyes met, hers wide in shock and relief, his burning with something deeper than chakra. With the same red energy, Naruto covered the girl in it, warming her with his chakra before he stood up. Ladybug stepped away from the open freezer, catching her breath. Her teeth still chattered slightly, but the determination in her eyes was back. "We need to cut her off completely," she said. "She's not teleporting randomly, she's using the Wi-Fi signals to jump between devices." Naruto nodded, glancing around the suite. "So the cell tower, it's the main hub, right?" "Exactly," she said, pulling out her yo-yo. "Chat Noir, you there?" There were a few seconds before a response, but quickly a video feed appeared on her yo-yo showing Chat hiding somewhere dark. "Yeah, I'm here, but I'm kinda on the run. What do you need?" he asked. "We need you to get to the top of the building and take out the tower." A second later, his voice crackled through her communicator. "I'm guessing you two have a plan. Hopefully she finally left me alone." "I'll get right on it, Bugaboo." But Naruto stepped forward, shaking his head. "Wait, he's going to be the one Lady Wifi's going to target first. She would go after him." Ladybug hesitated, then gave a small smirk. "That's the plan." Before Naruto could respond, she tossed her yo-yo high above her head. Lucky charm. A glowing red flash filled the room, and down fell a makeup mirror, landing perfectly in her outstretched hands. Naruto blinked, staring at the mirror. "Okay, gotta be honest, wasn't expecting that one." "Me neither," Ladybug admitted, turning it over in her hands. Naruto leaned closer, a faint smile beneath his mask. "Don't worry, we'll figure it out on the way." He looked at her, calm, reassuring, and despite the chaos around them, Ladybug found herself nodding. They were going to make it through this. Even if the next few minutes would be anything but easy. From the rooftop stairwell, Ladybug and Fire Shadow emerged into the open air. The sky above Paris had darkened with clouds, casting long shadows over the glassy buildings, but even through the gloom, they could see Chat Noir moving like a streak of black and silver across the rooftop. Lady Wifi was already there, hovering with a cocky smirk on her face, purple energy swirling at her fingertips. Phones floated mid-air around her like satellites, each screen casting an eerie glow. The cell tower loomed just behind her, tall and humming, its signal waves pulsing like a heartbeat. Chat Noir sprinted low across the rooftop, vaulting over air vents and flipping over support beams, his baton spinning in wide arcs to deflect incoming pause discs. "You're really making me work for this, you know," he shouted, ducking just as a glowing disc whizzed past his ear. Lady Wifi sent out a barrage of energy discs, rapid-firing them like missiles. "You're not getting anywhere near that tower, kitty, not until I know exactly who's hiding behind that mask of hers." Chat twisted in midair, rebounding off a wall with a graceful somersault. He extended his baton and attempted to launch himself skyward toward the tower, but Lady Wifi snapped her fingers. One of the floating phones zipped in front of him and unleashed another disc. It struck the tower's support beam behind him, sparking a brief surge of electricity and knocking him off balance mid-leap. Ladybug's hands clenched around the mirror. She's too fast, she muttered. She's predicting him too well. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he followed Lady Wifi's patterns. No, she's not predicting. She's tracking him with the phones. Just then, Ladybug squinted against the faint sunlight pushing through the clouds. The mirror in her hands gleamed. Wait, she whispered. The light. Without hesitation, she turned, angling the compact mirror just right, catching the sun's rays and reflecting a sharp beam directly into Lady Wifi's eyes. The villain shrieked, blinded for a split second. Gah! That's all Naruto needed. In an instant, Fire's shadow darted forward, his cloak whipping around him as chakra surged in his legs. He moved in a blur, closing the distance in a heartbeat, and with a sharp upward twist, launched himself high over a cluster of floating phones. A stream of water chakra spiraled around his arm like a vortex. Lady Wifi turned, just in time to see his masked form descending toward her. Gotcha, Naruto said, calm, but with steel in his voice, as he brought his water-coated fist crashing down toward the floating devices. Glass shattered. Sparks flew. And the momentum of the battle shifted. They had their opening. Lady Wifi stumbled, flickering with static as her connection began to fail. Her teleportation stuttered. She turned toward the remaining phones, only to find Naruto already moving. Dashing with streaks of water chakra still trailing from his arms, smashing each device one by one with precision. No, Lady Wifi cried out, reaching for her last functioning phone. Now, Ladybug shouted. She hurled her yo-yo. It sliced clean through the air and smacked the device from Lady Wifi's hands, wrapping around her with practiced ease. Naruto landed beside her, his hand glowing as he reached forward and yanked the black butterfly from the air. No more running, he said firmly, but not without sympathy. Ladybug let out her yo-yo, catching the Akuma in it before pulling it back. She spun it quickly, cleansing the butterfly in a flash of light. And with one shout of Miraculous Ladybug, she tossed the lucky charm into the air. A brilliant swirl of pink light spread outward like a wave, restoring every damaged phone, shattered glass, and even the cracked walls of the suite. Everything was returned to normal. Ladybug and Chat Noir turned to Naruto with relieved smiles. They raised their fists. Naruto mirrored them, bringing his own in. Pound it, they all said together. And just like that, it was over. Chat gave him a small thumbs up before leaping away into the fading sky. Naruto remained behind for a moment, watching them go. And then, as always, he was alone again. The wind tugged at his coat as he stood in the quiet aftermath. The stars starting to appear above Paris. As the sun began to set behind the Paris skyline, casting long shadows over the city, Naruto stood alone on a rooftop, his teammates having already gone their separate ways after the fight. The silence felt familiar. He slowly sat on the ledge, the wind brushing past his cloak as he stared down at his hands. That moment in the suite replayed over and over in his mind. The red chakra had flared, no hand sign, no conscious command, it had just responded. Instantly shattering Lady Wifi's lock like it wasn't even there. Kurama's chakra, he thought. But that didn't feel like the usual rage. It felt focused, like it knew exactly what to do. He flexed his fingers, a faint tingle still lingered beneath his skin. I knew Kurama's chakra could burn through things, but, canceling her power, he muttered to himself. That wasn't just raw strength. A long pause stretched out, then, a quieter thought, do I even understand chakra anymore? He looked out over the city, the lights blinking on one by one like stars on Earth. So much had changed since he'd come here. New enemies. New allies. And now, even his own power felt unfamiliar. There might be more to me than even I realized, he said softly, his voice carried away by the wind. And with that, he stood up. Without a word, he leapt into the air, back into the maze of rooftops. Back into the mystery that was slowly beginning to unfold around him. The golden light of midday filtered lazily through the tall classroom windows, casting long shadows across the desks and warming the polished floors. The room buzzed with motion, organized chaos in the purest form. Students moved with purpose, shifting between stations, their voices overlapping in a tangle of directions, costume checks, and last-minute script edits. This wasn't just another school day, it was production day. Their class project, a short horror film that would be screened for the rest of the school. Special permission had been granted for them to stay after hours, transforming their familiar classroom into a mock movie set. Teams had been formed with careful deliberation, each group mirroring a real production crew. There were actors, Mylene, Alex, Ivan, Adrian, and a few others filling in smaller roles. There were the makeup artists, the schedule keepers, the sound crew, and the all-important directors, Alia and Nino, working in sync as they finalized the script and called out scene instructions. Adrian, ever the reluctant model, sat in a folding chair with a makeup sponge dabbing at his cheek, his expression a mix of amusement and helpless resignation. And then there were the producers, Marinette and Naruto, standing side by side near the back of the room. Marinette held a clipboard tucked under one arm. A sketchbook open in her hands. Naruto, grinning as usual, leaned over his own notes, humming under his breath, fingers tapping in rhythm. Marinette should have been focused. She really should have. Technically, she was. But her eyes kept drifting sideways, drawn to the boy beside her like a moth to flame. She didn't mean to stare, really. But there was something about the way the light danced in his hair, the way he stood so relaxed yet ready, the quiet confidence in how he carried himself. Her pencil hovered over the page, where a half-finished costume design waited for her attention, but instead of detail lines or color notes, her sketch had slowly transformed: a hood, some flames. A mask. Her fingers froze. No, she whispered to herself. Naruto tilted his head toward her. Her face flushed. And nothing, just thinking out loud. He chuckled, the sound warm and teasing. You do that a lot. She looked away quickly, scribbling nonsense in the corner of her page to hide the tiny swirl of fire she'd just drawn, and the messy hint of blonde hair above it. It didn't make sense. Naruto was Naruto, friendly, kind, open. Fire's shadow was secretive, a ninja, and while a great friend, he was definitely hiding a lot, much more than her or Chat Noir. And yet, the similarities gnawed at her. It had to be Alia's fault. If she wasn't on the same team as her crush. Marinette could focus. It had been Alia's idea in the first place to make Marinette and Naruto the producers, probably trying to play matchmaker while also managing the workload. Still, she didn't mind. The costumes were fun to make, and Naruto was surprisingly good at organizing chaos. She shook the thoughts off. There was no time for daydreams or theories, they had a production to manage, and focus was key. Just as she steeled herself to dive back into work, a scream ripped through the air. The scream jolted through the room, sharp and sudden, snapping Marinette out of her thoughts. Heads turned, the camera paused, Nino quickly called, "Cut." All eyes landed on Mylene. Trembling slightly and clutching her chest, eyes locked on Ivan, who stood frozen mid-scene, wearing a grotesque, scaly horror mask with long fangs and bulbous, beady eyes. Adrian, ever the professional, stepped away from the faux dungeon wall he'd been leaning on and made his way off-set. Before he could say a word, the makeup crew swarmed him again, brushes and sponges already at the ready. He shot Nino a pleading look over their heads. Nino ignored it, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "We've already done this scene 10 times, Nino groaned, voice half exhausted, half begging the universe for patience. A voice popped in from behind the camera setup, 14, actually. Alex. A small tomboyish girl with cropped red hair and piercing blue eyes, she leaned casually on a light stand, her black beanie slouched over one ear. Her outfit was sharp and bold, black with electric green accents, combat boots tapping idly on the floor. Her smirk only grew at Nino's defeated sigh. Mylene muttered an apology, clearly rattled. Ivan, towering and gentle, stepped forward and reached for his mask. "It's okay, Mylene," he said softly. "It's just me." He peeled the horrificator mask off his head and held it up with both hands. "See? Not scary at all." For a brief moment, her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes softened. And then, honestly, he doesn't even need the mask to be scary. Chloe's voice rang out, crisp and poisonous as ever. The room went still. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Kim rolled his eyes. Alex visibly scoffed. Nino looked like he wanted to say something but bit his tongue instead. Marinette clenched her jaw, heat rising in her chest. Why does she always have to tear people down? She thought bitterly. Chloe always knew exactly when to strike, never with fire, always with ice. But the moment passed. As always, people let it slide. Nino shook his head and waved at Ivan. "Mask back on, dude, you're the monster, remember?" Ivan gave a small nod and carefully slid the mask back over his head. That was enough to send Mylene spiraling again. She muttered something under her breath, unintelligible, panicked, and took a hasty step backward, accidentally bumping into someone behind her. She squeaked in fright, visibly jumping from the touch. "Oh, come on," Chloe said with a dramatic sigh, crossing her arms. "At this rate, we'll need a monster to chase her out of the movie. Call it, the attack of the timid turnip." Mylene's face crumpled. Without a word, she turned and bolted out of the classroom, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Marinette instinctively took a step forward. "Mylene, wait." But she hesitated near the door, turning back to the others. "Isn't anyone going to go after her?" Silence. Then, Ivan's voice, soft, but firm, "I will." He took off the mask again, handed it to Alex without a word, and followed after her. Marinette watched him go, something like guilt tightening in her chest. The energy in the room had shifted, but no one said anything. The production went on. And still, somewhere deep in her thoughts, her eyes drifted toward Naruto once more. As the door clicked shut behind Ivan, a heavy silence hung over the classroom. For a few seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The tension was thick, the kind that buzzed just under the skin. Then Alex turned, arms crossed and voice sharp. "Seriously, Chloe, did you have to go there?" Chloe scoffed, flipping her hair. "Oh please, it's not my fault she's scared of her own shadow." No one said anything to the blonde. Several disappointed stares were enough to slightly unnerve, although half of the class didn't seem to care. Chloe rolled her eyes, speaking out first. "Well, I suppose it is important, we all worked hard on this. If she's going to flake, someone else should take her place." "But she hasn't flaked," Alia cut in. "She was trying, you're the one who broke her spirit." Adrian, quiet up until now, stepped away from the makeup crew and added softly, "Chloe, you didn't need to insult her." Chloe didn't respond, her lips pulling into a tight line as she turned away in a huff. A few moments later, The door opened again. Ivan walked back in slowly, mask tucked under his arm. His face was tight with frustration. "She's in the bathroom," he said. "Crying, says she's not coming back. Because of what Chloe said." Chloe folded her arms tighter but said nothing. Nino sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "We're already behind, we can't reshoot everything, we're gonna have to replace her." "Replace her?" Naruto's voice cut in, calm but firm. He stood near the desk he and Marinette had been using, arms crossed loosely. "You really think it'll go smoother if you just drop your lead like that?" The girl's terrified, maybe someone should be helping her instead of tossing her aside. Some students murmured in agreement. "Well, we do need a lead," Alia admitted, hesitant. "But I don't want to recast her if we can help it." "She is the main character," Max pointed out, adjusting his glasses. "Replacing her this late might disrupt the flow of the whole production. Not to mention," Naruto added, "you'll still have a scared and hurt friend sitting alone in the bathroom." For a moment, the class mulled over that. Then Marinette stepped forward. "No," she said clearly. "We're not replacing her." Everyone looked at her. "Mylene's the star of this movie, and she's perfect for it. She's just scared, and we've all been scared at some point. But she trusted us to help her through it, and we let her down." She turned toward the door with new resolve in her step. "I'm going after her." A quiet beat passed. Then Nino nodded slowly. "All right, we'll hold off for now." Naruto gave her a small smile as she passed. "Tell her she's not alone." Marinette returned the smile, soft, but grateful, before pushing through the classroom doors, determination written across her face. Marinette walked briskly through the quiet hallway, the echo of her footsteps the only sound in the empty stretch between the classroom and the girls' bathroom. Her concern for Mylene still clung tightly to her chest, but when she pushed the bathroom door open, what she saw made her freeze in place. Thick trails of pink, viscous goo streaked across the tiled floor like something out of a horror movie. Some of it clung to the walls in slow-dripping globs, while the mirror above the sinks was cracked with small splashes of the same strange substance coating the surface. The room was empty otherwise, no Mylene, no voice, no sign of anything human. "What the heck?" Marinette whispered, backing out quickly. She turned and rushed back to the classroom, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what she had just seen. But the moment she stepped through the doors, she was met with a new wave of irritation. Chloe standing at the front of the class in front of Alia and Nino, dramatically holding the script in one hand. "I should be the lead now," Chloe declared, tossing her golden hair over one shoulder. Clearly, Mylene couldn't handle the role. "But don't worry, I was born for the spotlight." Alia sighed loudly. "Chloe, this isn't a fashion show." "She's right," Adrian said gently, trying not to stir up too much drama. "This isn't really fair to Mylene." Chloe scoffed, ignoring them entirely. "We can't just wait around forever, we have, 3 hours left. I volunteer as tribute, you're welcome." Marinette stepped forward, putting herself between Chloe and the others. "Chloe, enough," she said firmly. "This isn't about you. This is Mylene's project too. And just because she's not here right now doesn't mean she's been replaced." Chloe narrowed her eyes. "And who's going to stop me, you?" Marinette gave her a patient, almost sweet smile. "No, but if you're not going to take this seriously, maybe you should leave. Maybe go back to the bathroom and double-check your makeup." That earned a few quiet laughs from the class. Chloe's cheeks flushed red. "You'll regret this," she huffed, turning on her heel with Sabrina trailing after her like a lost puppy. A few of Chloe's usual hangers-on followed her out the door, muttering under their breaths. Nino let out a long sigh. Okay, well, that solves one problem. But not the main one, Alia added, tapping her clipboard. We don't have much time left, and Mylene's still missing. I was just at the bathroom, Marinette spoke up quickly, her expression darkening. She's not there. And something weird is going on. The place was covered in this thick pink goo. The class went quiet, exchanging nervous glances. Pink goo, Adrien repeated. That doesn't sound good. No kidding, Naruto muttered under his breath from the side. Marinette was about to say more when a piercing scream ripped through the building, sending a jolt down everyone's spines. The door slammed open a second later as Chloe burst back into the classroom, eyes wide with fear. It's coming, she cried. Something's wrong, this horrible thing tried to attack me in the hall. Everyone turned to the windows. The warm glow of late afternoon was gone, replaced by a creeping violet dusk that had settled far too quickly. Marinette's heart skipped a beat. A villain, she whispered, gripping her bag a little tighter. Naruto's eyes narrowed beside her. The heavy doors of the school creaked open as the remaining students cautiously stepped out into the open courtyard. The late afternoon sky hung heavy and dim, casting a purplish hue over the school grounds. It wasn't just darker, it felt wrong. Off. The kind of quiet that pressed against your chest. Whoa, Nino muttered, eyes scanning the scene. Thick streaks and splatters of the same pink goo Marinette had seen in the bathroom covered the school grounds now. It oozed down locker doors, clung to stair railings, and formed puddles in the middle of the stone paths. But what stood out more, what chilled them all to the bone, was the emptiness. Okay, this is officially creepy, Alia muttered, glancing at the pink goo trailing along the floor like veins. Where is everyone? Nino pulled out his phone and tapped it into video mode, his brows furrowed. If something weird is going on, and it's much better than what we were doing. He panned across the goo-covered courtyard, then zoomed in on the empty hallway ahead. It's like the school's been evacuated but no one told us. We were just filming a horror movie, Alex added with an uneasy smirk. Guess it's turning into the real thing. As they all cautiously made their way toward the principal's office. Nino kept recording, narrating like a true amateur documentarian. But as they entered the office, only to find it dark and empty, Marinette lingered behind. Her eyes flicked to Nino, still narrating, then to Alia's confused expression. She quietly slipped her bag off her shoulder, letting it drop behind a hallway pillar with a soft thump. Then she vanished into the shadows of the corridor. Nino turned just in time to see her bag abandoned on the floor. Guys, I think we lost another one, he said, voice just slightly panicked as he panned the camera to show the empty hallway. Naruto stood near the back of the group, eyes narrowed as he scanned the far ends of the courtyard. His senses were flaring, dangerously so. Something was wrong. And he knew, more than anyone, that this was no coincidence. We need to talk to the principal, Nino said decisively, looking back toward the school entrance. If something's going on, he'll know what to do. The class murmured in agreement, slowly making their way toward the front office. But as the group turned, neither Naruto nor Adrien followed. Unnoticed in the shuffle, both boys veered off in separate directions, Adrien ducking into a narrow hallway, Naruto slipping behind a supply shed with practiced ease. One with purpose, the other with instinct. Back with the group, Marinette paused just outside the principal's office. Biting her lip. Her heart was racing, not with panic, but with urgency. If Ladybug was going to help stop whatever this was, she couldn't keep hiding. The others pushed open the office door, only to find it empty. Papers were scattered. The lights were off, and there was no sign of the principal or any staff at all. "He's gone too," Alia whispered, her grip on her phone tightening. A few more students gasped or muttered in panic, the weight of the moment setting in. The entire school was emptying, and fast. In the growing chaos, Marinette quietly stepped back. She let her bag fall to the floor in the hallway behind them with a loud enough thud to draw no attention, then turned and slipped silently down another corridor. If the others found her bag, they'd assume she was just another missing student, taken like the rest. But this was all part of her plan. Marinette sprinted toward the nearest empty classroom, already pulling the earrings from her pocket. Her face was determined now, no trace of the flustered girl from earlier. It was time. Ticky, spots on. Ladybug landed gracefully in front of the group, her yo-yo winding back with a soft snap. The few remaining students jolted in surprise before relief washed over their faces. "I'm here to help," she announced, standing tall. "Oh my gosh," Alia's voice rose with excitement, her phone already out and aimed like a spotlight. "The Ladybug is going to love this. This footage is gold." "Seriously," Nino added, still filming with a grin. "If we get Ladybug and some epic villain takedown in this movie, we might actually get an A for once." Ladybug gave a polite smile, but her gaze was already shifting, sensing the flicker of movement above. With a blur of motion, Fire Shadow and Chat Noir landed nearby, almost in sync. Fire Shadow's hood caught the light just right, his blonde strands poking out as he adjusted the edge of his cloak. Chat Noir twirled his staff, grinning confidently. Marinette's breath caught for half a second. Her eyes lingered on Fire Shadow a beat longer than necessary. They all showed up to the school at the same time. Her stomach gave a small twist. They could know each other. In real life. Her mind tugged at the thread like it always did, and her eyes narrowed slightly. There was something in the way Fire Shadow held himself, a casual posture, but with that same quiet confidence she'd noticed at school earlier that day. But just as quickly, she shoved the thought down. "No, there's no way," she crossed her arms and shook her head internally. "I'm overthinking it again. So what if he doesn't follow the same rules? Doesn't mean I want to figure out who he is. Even if I still don't understand him. Or his powers, or how much he's actually hiding." The thought hung in her head a little longer than she liked. "Another akumatized villain," Chat Noir said, breaking her focus. "Guess Hawkmoth's still on a roll." "Obvious villain, goo everywhere," Fire Shadow added, motioning toward a smear of pink sludge along the wall. "I'm guessing it's not part of the set design." Ladybug nodded. "No, this is real, and it's getting worse. We need to find out who it is before more people disappear." Chat Noir leaned on his staff, raising an eyebrow. "Should we split up?" "No," Ladybug said quickly. "We lead everyone back to the classroom, somewhere familiar and safe. Then we figure out what we're dealing with." Fire Shadow gave a small nod and smile under his mask. "Smart, best to keep the civilians in one place." Plus, Chat grinned. "It's better than wandering around looking for goo monsters." With that, Ladybug turned back to the students. "All right, everyone, back to the classroom. Stay close to us." Alia, of course, kept recording every second, already narrating her footage for the Lady blog. "This is so going viral." As they led the students back, Ladybug stayed a step ahead, but her thoughts lagged behind, once again circling around a single cloaked figure with blonde hair and too many secrets. The classroom doors creaked open slowly, the group stepping inside with cautious, measured steps. But what awaited them inside made several students recoil. The goo had spread thick, Glossy streaks of it clung to the walls and ceiling, dripping onto desks like melting wax. The overhead lights flickered dimly, casting eerie shadows that danced over the distorted set pieces they'd worked so hard on just hours before. Alia grimaced, stepping around a puddle with a wet squelch. Okay, this is way worse than I thought. Ladybug's eyes narrowed as she scanned the room. This wasn't here earlier. Someone, or something, came through. Nino glanced down, blinking at something half buried in the sludge. He reached down with 2 fingers and carefully pulled it free. Guys? He held up a sleek designer shoe, one of Adrian's. Everyone fell quiet. Ladybug's mouth tightened. So Adrian's been taken too. Who is this thing? One student asked nervously. Why would it attack us? Fire Shadow stood near the front of the room, arms crossed, his eyes carefully scanning every slimy surface. More like it's hunting, one by one, quite efficient. Before anyone could respond, a crash reverberated in the room. A student screamed as a desk was hurled from the corner of the room, smashing against the chalkboard in an explosion of wood and goo. A long, fleshy tail coiled back through the broken desks, and a moment later, it emerged. The creature was huge, easily twice their height, towering and grotesque. Its skin was a glistening pink, like raw jelly, shifting and oozing with every movement. Jagged claws tipped blue hands that flexed with unnatural grace. Hair-like dreadlocks of goo flowed behind its head, their ends tinged in an ominous, sickly blue. Its maw was wide and round, stretching unnaturally across its face before it let out a guttural roar, holding the captured student in its tail like a trophy. Gasps filled the room, the student squirmed in its grip, too terrified to scream. Ladybug snapped into motion, yanking her yo-yo free. Let them go. Chat Noir's baton extended with a metallic hiss. Well, that's new. Fire Shadow, already moving, narrowed his eyes. Definitely an akumatized villain. But instead of attacking, the creature let out another low roar, and turned, bounding toward the open door. It's running. Ladybug shouted. After it, Fire Shadow darted forward, already forming hand signs as red chakra flickered faintly around him. Chat Noir dashed in close behind, staff in hand. Is it scared of us? No, Ladybug muttered as she sprinted, heart hammering. It's leading us somewhere. Together, the heroes gave chase, the sounds of running feet and splashing goo echoing down the darkened, slime-covered halls. The slime-coated beast barreled down the hallway, snarling low and wet, then skidded to a halt. Standing frozen in front of it, wide-eyed and trembling, was Chloe. She hadn't followed the group. She had wandered off, maybe to complain, maybe to find a mirror. And now, she stood alone, mouth open in a silent scream. The sound pierced the corridor like a siren, and in that very moment, the creature twitched, shuddered, then grew. It doubled in height in a grotesque burst, its tendrils thickening, mouth stretching into a jagged maw. Ladybug's heart dropped. It feeds off fear. Let's do this quick, I got some things to work on back at home, Fire Shadow said with a smirk. He was already mid-air, the cross seal snapping into place. In an instant, 4 clones erupted into the hallway in bursts of smoke. They surrounded the creature in a blur of speed, forcing it back. The real Fire Shadow's hands blurred into motion, Earth-style, Mud-breaker barrage. Each clone followed suit, slamming their palms into the goo-covered ground. Pillars of jagged stone burst from beneath the monster, angled to trap and strike, but the creature leapt just in time, twisting mid-air. It landed on the wall like a lizard, hissed, then vomited a stream of pinkish slime down toward the clones and Fire Shadow himself. Ladybug whipped out her yo-yo, spinning it so fast it became a blur. I've got it. She deflected the sludge in mid-air, goo splashing across the walls and floor instead of hitting Fire Shadow. We can't let it touch us. Too late, Chat Noir said with a grunt, swinging his baton to knock over a collapsing desk before it trapped a student. It's everywhere. The beast dropped from the wall and swiped, sending a clone flying into the lockers where it disappeared in smoke. Ladybug dashed under its arm and tried wrapping her yo-yo around its leg, pulling hard, but the monster reeled back and dragged her through the air instead, slamming her against the wall. Ladybug, Fire Shadow shouted. He went to move but slipped, the floor beneath him now coated in goo. And then it happened again. A shriek echoed through the school, from another student that had peeked around the corner. The monster twitched, its shoulders heaved, its body swelled once more. No, Ladybug shouted, pulling herself upright. It's getting stronger every time someone's afraid. With a final roar, the monster lunged forward, not to attack, but to escape. It smashed through a wall and disappeared into the gymnasium, its goo trailing behind it like slime from a giant snail. The three heroes tried to follow, but the goo beneath them thickened, turning sticky, heavy. Their limbs sank in just enough to slow them completely. Ladybug grunted as her foot sunk into the pink sludge. It trapped us. Chat Noir yanked on his leg, which barely moved. We're stuck, this is seriously disgusting. Fire Shadow didn't struggle, instead, he stared in the direction the monster had gone, hands resting calmly at his sides. Fear makes it stronger, he muttered. Which means if we keep chasing it around people, it's just going to keep growing. Ladybug nodded, breath short. We need a new plan, fast. Chat Noir rubbed the back of his neck. So, what, we find it and make it feel safe, give it a hug? No, Fire Shadow said, voice low, but still playful and confident. We isolate it, cut it off from the fear, that's the only way to weaken it. Ladybug's mind turned, fast. We could trap it, somewhere away from the students. And then take out the Akuma, Chat Noir added. The three locked eyes, united even in the muck. All right, Ladybug said, voice sharp. Let's turn the tide. Fire Shadow narrowed his eyes, breath steady. Then, red chakra flared. It pulsed from his body like a second skin, ghostly and wild. Casting crimson light across the goo-slicked walls. The slime around his legs hissed, steamed, then dissolved, curling into vapor as if it were never there. Ladybug froze, her eyes widened, her thoughts spiraling. It wasn't just strong, it felt different, older, wilder. It burned through the monster's power like it was nothing. Not even her yo-yo could do that. He didn't even struggle. Fire Shadow stepped forward, the last of the goo evaporating from his hands. It responds to corrupted energy, he said casually, as if this wasn't shocking at all. I've been training with it, seeing how far it can go. Ladybug blinked. Wait, what is that? Her voice cracked slightly as she tried to make it sound more curious than shaken. Chat Noir was less subtle. That's not chakra I've seen before. What, did you unlock some kind of anti-goo mode? Fire Shadow gave a faint grin under his mask. It's a certain form of energy I've been working with. Seems like it can nullify powers to a degree. I'm still testing the limits. Ladybug's fingers clenched around her yo-yo. Her mind wouldn't stop turning. He says it so easily, like it's nothing. But that red chakra, it dissolved the goo instantly. He didn't even hesitate. He's dangerous. No, not dangerous. Just different. There's way more to Fire Shadow than he's letting on. She felt it now more than ever, the mystery. The nagging feeling in her gut every time he moved like someone familiar. Every time his eyes flashed like Naruto's. But she shook it off, not now, later. Before any of them could speak again, a clatter sounded from the ruined hallway behind them. Ladybug spun on instinct, yo-yo raised, only to pause. 3 students emerged through the broken classroom door, cautiously stepping over the goo. Ivan, Alia, and Nino. "Wait, what?" Chat Noir asked. "Didn't we just leave you all behind?" Alia's camera phone was already out, recording. "Well, yeah, but the goo's spreading fast, like, freakishly fast." "We were hiding at first," Nino added. Adjusting his glasses, "but then we figured maybe we should stop hiding and help instead." Ivan crossed his arms, Mylene would have wanted that. Ladybug stared, her heart sank a bit. "How fast is this thing working? It's already taken more students while we were stuck." She turned toward Fire's shadow, who was already scanning the slime coating the hallway with narrowed eyes. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, turning back to the students. "It's dangerous out here." Alia grinned, "We know, but we're still part of this. You can't just push us aside." Nino nodded, resolute, "We helped make this movie, we're not letting some goo monster ruin it." Ladybug hesitated, then slowly nodded. "All right," she said. "But you follow every order we give, got it?" They all nodded quickly. Chat Noir raised a brow, "We really letting the film crew join the rescue squad now?" Ladybug sighed, "Looks like it." Fire's shadow gave a single nod. "Just try and be careful." The plan was forming, the pieces were moving. And the real fight was just beginning. The heavy double doors to the gym creaked open. A wave of silence met the group as they stepped inside. The once bright space had transformed into a dim, echoing nest. Goo clung to the bleachers like vines, and soft, pulsing pods coated the walls and floor. Faint shapes moved inside them, some curled, some still, all unmistakably human. Ladybug's heart twisted, this is where they've all been taken. Alia's camera trembled in her grip, but she kept recording, this is so messed up. Fire's shadow moved with sharp focus, surveying the pods as they walked. These things, they're like cocoons, alive, almost. Yeah, well let's make sure no one's staying in them, Chat Noir muttered, gripping his baton. Ladybug stepped forward, Principal Damocles, Rose, Mylene. A few groggy voices responded weakly, a slow ripple of movement started across the pod students, hope flickered in Ladybug's chest. "Adrian," she called. Silence. "H here," Adrian's voice rang out, faint, muffled from a nearby pod. She exhaled in relief. "Naruto?" she asked, eyes scanning. No answer. Her stomach tightened, but then, after a few beats, "Yeah, I'm good," his voice came from the far side of the gym, slightly strained. Ladybug blinked, why did they both hesitate? But she didn't have time to think on it. Because before anyone could move toward the pods, a roar tore through the gym like a wave. The slime on the ceiling shuddered, then split open. The monster dropped down. Bigger than before. Twice the size it had been. Its long tendrils of blue-tipped pink hair dripped goo as it slammed down onto the floor, sending a quake through the building. Its many eyes glowed bright, and it wasn't happy. The monster's gaze scanned the heroes, and the students. And it screeched, a noise like grinding glass and tearing metal. Ladybug didn't hesitate, "Get ready." The heroes rushed forward. Chat Noir sprang into action with a twist of his baton, launching himself at the monster's flank. Fire's shadow made a rapid hand seal, sending a wave of earth spikes toward its feet. Ladybug hurled her yo-yo to deflect another slime blast aimed at the students. The pods rattled violently, some of the cocooned students stirred, groaning. "Get them out of here," Ladybug shouted back to Alia and Nino. Now. But, Alia started, now. Alia and Ivan moved toward the pods, while the heroes clashed with the horrificator in the center of the gym. The monster roared again, this time louder, more primal. And this time, it wasn't running, the gym exploded into motion. Fire Shadow was first, his hands blurred through hand signs, creating a rush of clones that scattered across the gym like a tactical flood. They darted around the horrificator, flanking it from all sides in a well-rehearsed dance. Now, Fire Shadow shouted, leaping high and twisting mid-air, a swirling ball of chakra forming in his hand. The monster snarled, twisting its grotesque body with unnatural speed, swatting two clones into goose-licked walls. It ducked the Rasengan at the last second, slamming its tail into the ground and causing a shockwave that sent the remaining clones bursting into smoke. Chat Noir dashed through the chaos, baton extending as he used it like a vaulting pole to flip over a tail swipe. I think our friend here has gotten an upgrade. No kidding, Ladybug whipped her yo-yo at the beast, wrapping around one of its clawed arms before swinging in a wide arc to slam both feet into its side. The horrificator stumbled back, roaring as its goose-licked form shimmered again, pulsing larger. It's feeding off fear again, Fire Shadow called out, landing beside Ladybug. Every time we dodge, the others flinch, it's making it stronger. Ladybug gritted her teeth and pulled her yo-yo back. We need to cut it off before it absorbs anyone else, Lucky Charm. A glow surrounded her as a small mirror fell into her hands. A mirror, she muttered. Didn't we get a mirror last time, called out Fire Shadow. But Ladybug was already scanning, her eyes landed on the students huddled behind the bleachers, wide-eyed, trembling. And then, the idea sparked. She turned to the group, it feeds off fear. What's the opposite of fear? Confidence, Fire Shadow said, understanding dawning in his voice. Ladybug grinned, then turned to the students. Everyone, listen to me, you have to believe we're going to win, no more fear. Alia stood up first, you heard her. Nino raised his phone higher, this is the best project footage ever, we're not scared. Ivan stepped forward, planting his feet, it's just a costume, we've seen worse. Little by little, the students started to straighten up. Shoulders lifted, eyes hardened, the atmosphere shifted. And the horrificator paused. Its form flickered. Then began to shrink. It screeched in confusion, tendrils twitching. Ladybug and Chat advanced side by side, Fire Shadow just behind them, pushing it back step by step, not with force, but with unwavering presence. The creature gave one final roar, but this time, there was no fear to feed on. It shrank further, smaller, weaker, until with a whimper, it turned and crawled toward Ivan. The gym had fallen still. In Ivan's arms. The monstrous form of the horrificator trembled, no longer snarling, no longer growing. Its goo-covered skin pulsed faintly, tendrils limp and dripping down its back, eyes wide and strangely sad. Ivan held it carefully, stunned. Then he saw it. Dangling from one of the matted dread-like tendrils, tangled in the pinkish slime, was a small skull and crossbones pendant, silver, worn from age, but unmistakable. The same one he had given Mylene. His breath caught. Mylene, he said quietly, like he wasn't sure if speaking her name would make it true or break the moment entirely. Ladybug stepped forward slowly, her footsteps soft against the gym floor still slick with remnants of pink goo. Her yo-yo was ready, but not raised, her expression careful, sympathetic. She stopped just beside Ivan, whose arms still cradled the shrinking form of horrificator. May I? She asked gently. Ivan glanced down at the pendant, then back up at her. He hesitated for only a second before nodding. Ladybug reached forward and carefully untangled the pendant from the monster's matted tendrils. As soon as her fingers closed around it, a pulse of dark energy flickered from within the tiny charm. "There you are," she murmured. She tossed the pendant high into the air and cried, "No more evil doing for you, little Akuma." Her yo-yo snapped upward like a flash of lightning, capturing the fluttering dark butterfly as it emerged. With a spin and a tug, it was purified in a flash of brilliant white light. Time to de-evilize. Bye-bye, little butterfly. With practiced grace, she released it to the skies, a smile of quiet triumph on her face. Then she twirled the yo-yo above her head, Miraculous Ladybug. A burst of magical light exploded from the yo-yo, spreading across the school like a warm breeze. The pink goo vanished in a shimmer, walls were restored, and the students trapped in pods slowly woke up, dazed but unharmed. Everything returned to normal, as if none of it had ever happened. In Ivan's arms, the monstrous horrificator was gone. Mylene had returned, small and quiet, blinking up at him with wide, tearful eyes. "Ivan?" she whispered. He held her tighter. "I'm here." The class stood in stunned silence, relief washing over them like the golden light through the now clear windows. And Marinette, Ladybug, stood in the center of it all, watching them, letting herself smile just a little. She turned to her teammates, Fire Shadow and Chat Noir at her side. But when she glanced at Fire Shadow, the image of Red Chakra still burned in her mind, a question buried behind her steady gaze. "There's definitely more to you than you're letting on." And one day, she told herself, she'd find out. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, all KAGE, out.